good news is this is the first time.
It's called the Economic Transformation Program, and it's the result of months of discussion and input from the public, private sector, civil service and government.
Kita perlu segera.
We need to take the high-skill, high-income route to quickly become and remain competitive.
Dan berpendapatan tinggi supaya kita dapat mengekalkan daya saing dalam ekonomi global.
And face all the other challenges in the global economy. We have absolutely no choice, no option.
Mempunyai pilihan ataupun option.
It was back in 1991 that then Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad first announced the goal of making Malaysia a fully developed country by the year 2020. But the Asian financial crisis of 1997-98 saw economic growth and private investment slump, and they never fully recovered. While under Mahathir, Vision 2020 was more of a slogan than a program, Najib Razak's team have aimed to lay out a detailed roadmap of how to actually reach the target. It will require sustaining economic growth of at least 6% a year in order to double average incomes in less than a decade.
In the first half of this year, our economy grew at 9.5%. So this is more like it. This is how we used to grow for a long period of time before the financial crisis. D24,
The government unveiled the outline of its economic program at 3 public sessions, which drew big crowds. The Economic Transformation Program has pinpointed a dozen sectors the government believes can drive the country towards its growth targets, including tourism, medical, business and financial services, education, oil and gas, palm oil, and a project to turn the capital into a world-class metropolis. It's looking to the private sector to provide some 90% of the $444 billion of investment it's targeting.
We have an ambitious plan to kickstart the transformation program, and that would require some kind of front-loading the government expenditure, particularly to kickstart some of the programs, high-impact projects.
That's precisely what the Prime Minister did in the recently announced budget for 2011. The government is launching several major initiatives, including a $14 billion mass rapid transit system that it hopes will act as a catalyst for private investment. It's also taking measures to boost interest in the stock market and ramping up spending on education and skills training, critical to shifting up the value chain.
This is not a plan. This is a program. A program is about action. Things that we do, projects that we intend to push through with timelines and champions and targets and all of those things monitoring.
The government's also working to transform the public service by slashing red tape and improving efficiency and transparency to make the country more attractive to private investors. And there are signs that's happening already.
Development company Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi's state investment arm, Mubadala, recently signed an agreement with a government-owned firm here to jointly develop a new $8 billion international financial district in Kuala Lumpur. Mubadala is also looking at investing up to $7 billion in a hydro-powered aluminium project in the state of Sarawak on the island of Borneo. The Abu Dhabi company is already developing a new showcase urban centre in the Iskandar Special Economic Zone near Malaysia's border with Singapore.
We see this as a sign of confidence, a vote of confidence, particularly by Middle Eastern investors in the Malaysian economy. I think that's a good start in terms of sustaining their interest in Malaysia's growth potential.
Through its labs and open days, the government has heard plenty about what investors want and expect.
Thank you very much for your time.
A lot of this is not about the will to do, but actually the pragmatism in achieving the objectives that have been set out and the timelines. So I think the program is well targeted, the ambitions are clearly stated, the execution hopefully will occur, and that will give confidence to the private sectors and others who are going to invest.
When I spoke to my colleagues this morning to get their sort of feedback, and they all just chanted execution, execution, execution.
In trying to execute his program, the Prime Minister is facing pressure from ordinary citizens concerned about the government's plans to cut subsidies and possibly introduce a goods and services tax. And while the private sector is pushing for more liberalization, there are powerful vested interests who favor maintaining the status quo.
We do see some hiccups in terms of the implementation of some of the reforms. But nevertheless, we do have a consistent roadmap in terms of the overall policy thrust and strategic direction. I think what's important here is to sustain the reform process.
Saya sendiri sebagai Perdana Menteri
I have taken a big risk as Prime Minister in announcing a detailed program in this voluminous roadmap document. It shows we are transparent and we are prepared to be held accountable by the Malaysian people.
untuk memenuhi janji kita pada rakyat.
No doubt business leaders too will be keeping copies of the document close at hand to make sure the government's words do indeed match its actions.